In all of New Ponyville, there were 45 time-telling devices. Of these 45, exactly 26 were watches. Of the remaining 19, 6 were grandfather clocks. Of those 6, there was, of necessity, one largest clock. And, as the largest clock, it naturally had the loudest tick. Furthermore, as would benefit a leader, this clock was located in Rarity's bedroom. The largest clock, with the loudest tick, was currently in very real danger of being smashed to silent pieces by Rainbow Dash. The only thing stopping her was that, in order to break the infernal device, Rainbow Dash would have to take her eyes off the bed. Not even for a second. She reminded herself again. She looked stoically at the 2 unicorns lying on top of the purple covers, each resting peacefully on their back. The clock ticked away as the seconds, and Dash sat in the backwards chair, her chin resting on the back of it. In the otherwise silent room, the sound was maddening. Given the additional circumstances of her friends, it was downright torturous. 20 minutes, Rainbow Dash noted to herself, as the clock ticked once more. She wasn't trying to keep track of time, but every second felt like a week. Make that a month, she corrected, as the clock continued to sound relentlessly. An eye lift fluttered, and Rainbow Dash was beside the bed before the chair hit the ground. The crash went unnoticed as Dash looked down at Twilight. Her face was impassive, but on the inside she was scanning Twilight's face desperately for any more sign of movement. And just as she was about to back up and return to her seat, she caught the faint flicker again. She remained perfectly still as Twilight's eyelids twitched silently. Twilight gasped softly, but her eyes didn't open. Rainbow Dash didn't know what to do, but between the clock and the day's events, she was out of patience. "Twilight," she spoke softly. The mare's eyes shot open, and Dash recoiled slightly. Rainbow Dash?" Twilight asked weakly. She began to move, but Dash placed a hoof firmly on her chest. "Don't move yet, Twi. I hit your head pretty bad." Dash's voice was soft, barely a whisper, her face unreadable. But something about her was irking Twilight. Twilight lay still for a moment, as the memories of recent events began returning to her. Rarity blacking out, the dreams, the silence. Twilight's head skipped a beat, but soft sounds surrounded her. "It's gone," she gasped gratefully. And it was just a dream. She squinted, her eyes silently as she looked up at Dash. Not used to the light yet. "Dash? What happened? Why am I in Rarity's bed?" Dash looked over his shoulder towards the empty wall before turning back to Twilight. "I don't know," she hesitated. "But it happened to every pony. The entire town. Every unicorn." Her voice trailed out as she stared over Twilight's head, lost in thought. Twilight was about to speak again when Dash finished her thought. "We were hoping you could tell us." Dash smiled for the first time down at her, but Twilight could sense that it was forced. Twilight tried to sit up again, but Dash's hoof was firm. She lifted a hoof to swat her friend away, but it seemed too heavy and sluggish to obey her command. "We?" asked Twilight, her hoof falling back down to her side. "Applejack is out helping the townsponies. Once we figured out how to snap you all out of it, well, it's not pretty, but it's better than letting them suffer." Dash looked over her shoulder towards the door distractedly, but quickly pulled her gaze back to Twilight. Twilight's gaze turned upwards in confusion. She squinted as the face of her friend was blurred by the bright light in the room. "Suffer? Dash, I was just unconscious. It was a nightmare, but I'll be fine." Dash hesitated, and Twilight could read the worry on her face. Not waiting for her friend to try and hide something from her again, Twilight pressed the issue. "Rainbow Dash, if there's something I should know—" "You were screaming," Rainbow Dash blurted out, and Twilight could finally detect a tinge of emotion in her voice. "You were screaming, and I couldn't make you stop. I couldn't do anything." Twilight felt something wet fall on her hoof, and realized that Rainbow Dash was crying. Moving her hoof to take her friends, Twilight finally found the strength to raise her other one, and shield her eyes from the glare. "Rainbow Dash, you did help me. I remember seeing you for a second. I remember being thankful, but I don't know why exactly. I know it was a bad dream, but I don't remember screaming." "It wasn't just you." Rainbow Dash wiped a hoof across her eyes, her voice becoming hard again. "Like I said, it happened to every pony. One second, I was asleep in my bed. The next, every pony was panicking." Dash looked over her shoulder before turning her gaze down to her friend, her eyes pleading. "Twi, if there's anything you can tell us, anything at all, Applejack and I just don't know what to do." Twi closed her eyes, letting them relax in quiet darkness. "I want to help," she thought to herself, "but I just don't know." "It was unicorns, right?" Twilight opened her eyes to see Dash nod. "And every pony else was unaffected?" Dash nodded again. "That implies something tied to magic." Twilight coughed, her throat feeling very sore for some reason. She tried not to think of the effects of screaming on her body as she spoke up. "Dash, could you give me a cup of water?" Rainbow Dash rose and walked over to the open door of the office, moving out of sight. For a few moments, the only sounds were the ticking of the clock and Rarity's soft breathing. With her attendant gone, Twilight adjusted herself into a sitting position, her physical strength returning rapidly. Dash re-entered the room holding a cup of water. Twilight gestured to the nightstand next to her and rubbed her eyes. When she opened them again, the brightness in the room was enough to enter her conscious mind. Rainbow Dash, why is this room so bright?" Twilight placed the water down next to her and looked into her eyes. "It's the same brightness it's always been, Twilight." She replied evenly. "You know you can't hide from her forever." She scolded herself. "It is?" Rainbow Dash saw a change come across Twilight's face. Where before Twilight had looked puzzled and a little worried, she suddenly seemed horrified. Like she might start screaming again any second, Dash thought as her body tensed. Twilight gulped, and Dash could see her throat bob as her face became slightly paler. Twilight looked at the cup, or perhaps at Rainbow Dash, or perhaps at the wall behind her. Dash turned her head over her shoulder automatically, unable to stop the natural reaction. Several moments passed with Twilight simply lying in bed, and the worry became too much for Dash. "Are you okay, Twi?" she ventured, not sure how to proceed. She wanted to help her friend, but this was all out of her territory. Remembering Twilight's earlier request, she gestured towards the cup beside the purple unicorn. "Have some water, Twi. You look fine." She knew she finished lamely, but Twilight didn't seem to notice. She just kept staring at, well, whatever she was staring at. "I've been trying, Rainbow Dash." Twilight's voice made Dash's stomach drop. It sounded weak, even pitiable. "My magic. It's gone." Rainbow Dash's jaw grew slack, but didn't have words left to comfort her friend. All she could do was look down into Twilight's eyes. They glistened back at her, entirely black in the dim light, as tears quickly began to form in them. Applejack walked forward dejectedly, her hooves stumbling over the rough stone beneath her. Her flank heaved as she gasped for breath, sweat running down her legs. That should be all of them, she thought to herself, but her ears remained attentive for the telltale wails of unicorns. Every pony is safe, I hope. When the whatever it was had happened, The ponies panicked as their friends fell in the streets. By the time Rarity and Twilight had been taken care of, however, many of the ponies had come to Rarity's office for help. Applejack thought back to this sense less than half a hour ago. Standing in the wrecked doorway, looking out into a town full of crying and pleading faces, asking for help. And I gave it to him. Her chest swelled with pride as her hoofsteps became a little lighter. I helped them all. I saved them all. Granted, if Rarity was any example, then they would have come around on their own eventually. But I led them, and I led them well. Surprisingly well, in fact. Once Applejack had spread the word of knocking the unicorns unconscious, the screams had begun to die out one by one. It was hard at first, clubbing or smothering her friends, but Applejack knew that it was for their own good. Stumbling into Rarity's office building, she let the battered table leg fall from her mouth, next to the upturned table it had originally been broken from. The lobby was in tatters from her earlier rampage, but right now it was the least of her worries. Though every step caused her legs to tremble from exhaustion, she made her way up the steps towards Rarity's office one at a time, finally pushing her way through the door. The office itself looked fine, and the door to the bedroom stood slightly ajar. Walking over to it, Applejack sighed with relief as she heard the sound of voices. Thanks, Celestia, she thought. At least one of them is awake with Rainbow Dash. Much of a good thing, just like in my dream. I just think it was some sort of subconscious reaction to... Oh, hello, Applejack. Twilight sat in bed and smiled as the orange mare nudged the door open, trotting inside. Rainbow Dash stood next to Twilight, looking worried. Applejack's gaze sought out Rarity, who remained how she had been left earlier. Her chest rose peacefully, and Applejack hoped that she would recover soon. Twilight coughed, and Applejack's gaze returned to her. I said, hello, Applejack. Twilight smiled playfully at her friend, but Applejack's jaw was slack. Twi? Your eyes. They didn't... they never... I know. Rainbow Dash told me. Twilight gazed up at Applejack, or at least something near her. Her eyes remained dilated, freakishly wide, with only the barest hint of white tinges on the edges. Besides giving her an unnerving look, it made it difficult to tell exactly where her gaze was fixed. I was just giving Dash my best theory on what happened. Oh, swell. Has there been any change in Rarity yet? Applejack knew that she sounded callous, and that if any pony could shed light on the situation, it was Twilight. But I watched her die. Or I thought I did. I can't do that again. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be her top priority, but making sure Rarity recovered took precedence over anything else. Dash shook her head while Twilight sulked. Sorry, AJ. She's just been lying there. I've tried waking her up gently once or twice, since Twilight got up, but I've got nothing so far. She glanced apologetically towards the earth pony, and then turned her gaze back to Twilight. You were saying, Twi? Twilight cleared her throat, and, with a hurt look towards Applejack, resumed her theory. Like I was saying, I dreamed of silence and light. The light kept getting brighter and brighter until it was painful, and I think that was like what happened to me. Something happened here that affected every unicorn, so logically, it's magic-related. And now I can't cast any magic at all, which... Whoa, Nelly! Hold on a tick there, Twi. Your magic ain't working? Applejack's relief at stopping the screams suddenly vanished, no longer sure that this ordeal was over. Twilight nodded, and Applejack could see that this was hard for her. Yes. It's not blocked, just gone. Like it never existed. And you might know what's going on, interrupted Rainbow Dash, looking hopeful. If you ponies would let me finish. Twilight looked to both of her friends, whose mouths were suddenly firmly shut. Sighing in relief, she continued. Good. Thank you. As I was saying, I don't know what's happening, but I think I can put two and two together. She turned her gaze to the ceiling as she did the mental math. I dreamed of silence and woke up with no magic. Too much light would be constructed as too much magic. So I think that New Ponyville may have been hit with some sort of magic wave. Her two friends looked down at her skeptically, and Twilight's cheeks reddened. Ball? Storm? It's magic. It doesn't have a shape. She threw her hooves up in frustration, knowing that the idea must sound rather silly to other ponies. But instead of chastising her for it, Applejack nodded strangely. So, y'all had some sort of magical overload, or something? She waved her hoof vaguely, indicating her lack of expertise. Something like that. My powers aren't being blocked, they're just gone. Twilight seemed to bounce back and forth between confident and terrified, and Applejack couldn't help but worry how well she was actually taking this. I can't even sense magic anymore. Anytime I try to feel for it, I just get, well, I guess the best translation would be silence. Applejack began to notice a trend whenever Twilight said that word. She always hesitated and dropped her volume just a tad, barely perceivable until she kept repeating it. Unicorn magic isn't like Pegasus wings, where they are just a physical part of the body. It's more like a smell or taste. When magic happens nearby, a unicorn can sense it to some degree. When the magic thing happened to us, it burned that sense out. Probably. Twilight didn't want us to second-guess herself, but she didn't want to make any promises either. Rainbow Dash looked down with confusion. So, the eyes are... Twilight squirmed awkwardly. I have no idea. It's some sort of physical side effect, I suppose. It does make everything seem brighter, though. Applejack stomped a hoof, her patience running out. With the startling attention of the two ponies on her, she glared angrily. Y'all are ignoring the important question here. Twi, how did this happen? Twilight blinked, confused. Well, like I said, AJ, a wall of magic... That ain't what I mean. I'm no unicorn, but wall of magic just don't appear from nowhere, so far as I know. How did this happen? Twilight was surprised at herself. She had been more than a little proud of herself at deducing her way to the cause of her problem, but she'd never considered the origin of the magic. Well, it's magic, so it came from a unicorn. But it's not a spell exactly. That doesn't make sense. Her friends looked down at her with confusion, and she backpedaled. All right. I'll start at the basics. Unicorns make magic to power spells. Spells use the magic as energy for doing whatever they're meant to do. Twilight stopped until her friends gave her a nod, indicating that they followed her so far. We weren't hit by a spell because spells are things like funny mustaches or big rocks. We were hit by magic. Specifically, a lot of it that was released very quickly. Twilight thought back to her days as a filly trying to learn magic. If you have a lot of magic bottled up in you at once, and you lose control, it dissipates around you. Every unicorn knows that. But a lot of magic was released quickly. It would dissipate into a wider area. Dash finished for her, proud of herself for following along so well. Applejack looked like she was still having some trouble, so Twilight continued for her sake. Not wanting to ruin her friend's pride, Twilight smiled at the standing Pegasus. Yes, Dash, it would affect a much larger area, but it would also grow more chaotic as it spread out until it finally dissipated. So, if New Ponyville were caught on the edge, we'd wind up with what we have here," finished Applejack, smiling smugly. Slightly irked by the constant interruption, Twilight forced another smile. "Yes, if I'm right, which is a big if." Twilight's mind had already reached the logical conclusion of her thoughts, but the smiles on her friends' faces told her that they hadn't yet arrived there. "Fine, then," she sighed inwardly. "I'll have to spell it out for them." This isn't complicated magic, but it was magic nonetheless. A unicorn had to cast it, and with New Ponyville being hit so hard, I can't believe it was just an accident. The smiles faded from the faces of Dash and Applejack as they too saw the obvious answer. "Girls, I think New Ponyville is under attack." The captain stared straight ahead as she walked. The armor of her guards on either side of her clacked loudly in her ears. All around her, similar noises disturbed the silence of the night. Her robes had been removed, but the familiar constraints of invisible bonds bound her wings magically to her side. The captain stumbled over a rock in the dirt, but quickly caught herself. "Don't let them see that you're tired," she thought as she gritted her teeth. "You're better than that. You're better than them." The hooded pony ahead turned her allure face back to the captain. Trixie wasn't the foremost pony, but she was making a point to make it seem like she was leading her troops. Her horn flared as the brightest light source nearby, something that the captain would know would be surely needed soon. The night is ending. She has to stop soon, thought the captain, as she picked her way carefully over the ground. As she took a few more tentative steps, she was surprised to find that her hooves no longer falling on randomly sharp rocks. Looking downwards in confusion, she saw traces of a faint path in the light from Trixie. Trixie apparently noticed this as well, for she held up a hoof. Every pony halted at once, with the exception of the captain, as Trixie turned to address the crowd. "Ponies of the Royal Guard," she began, letting the noise of the captain being pulled to the ground fade before continuing. "Prepare the supplies and set up camp along this path. The entrance to New Ponyville should be less than a mile down this path. So if we rest here and gather our strength, we may attack tomorrow." She turned back away from her troops and looked down at the path. Scuffles of commotion arising from the ponies emerged from the forest and spread out on the dry trail. "Warrant officer!" she called out. There was a brief flash, and the small pony stood by her side. "Yes, ma'am." Trixie gazed into the darkness, contemplating her next move. "Captain, bring me the captain, and a patrol of guards. 4, no, 5 ponies strong." The officer nodded and trotted off toward the captain, who watched him approach with contempt. The officer exchanged a few words with the guards and then moved away again, never bothering to look down at the captive. The captain was pushed forward by her guards after a moment, arriving behind Trixie after a few dozen steps. Trixie turned from her vigil as the captain came close. "Good morning, Captain. I hope the trip wasn't too hard on you." She smiled knowingly at the slumped figure. The captain smiled. If she was going to die to this foal, she was damn well going to deserve it. "Actually, I prefer the air. You know what that's like. Oh, I'm sorry. I forget. I'm not around Pegasus anymore." Trixie smiled condescendingly towards the prisoner, but the captain caught a flash of annoyance in her eyes. "Really, Rainbow Dash? I could order your death at a moment, and you choose to taunt me. That seems rather immature, even for your standards. Would you rather me beg for your mercy and throw myself on the ground in tears?" The captain barked out a laugh. "Not going to happen, traitor. Even if you kill me, I'll die knowing that Nightmare Moon will annihilate you in retribution." It was Trixie's turn to laugh, and the sound managed to be light and airy while remaining frigid. Come now, Captain, do you really think I would have done this if I wasn't assured of my success? With your mangled body returned to camp whilst I'm in the Queen's presence, apologizing profusely for my audacity in assuming your guilt, well, let's face it. The cards are in my favor. You don't think that looks a little too convenient? The captain was legitimately surprised. Even Trixie can't be this stupid, she thought to herself. Trixie laughed airily again. A sound the captain had come to dread. Does it, Captain? Ask yourself, if you were working with them right now and learned that I was here, what would your first course of action be? I'd attack, she thought, before she could stop herself. Damn it, she's right. I'd attack her while she wasn't expecting it, before we were cornered in. Not willing to give Trixie the credit, the captain tried another tactic. Nightmare Moon would never believe that I betrayed her, and I'm nothing if not loyal, foal. The captain's own temper was rising, even though she knew that Trixie was just trying to get to her. Besides, New Ponyville doesn't know you are here. What happens when Nightmare Moon arrives to find an innocent village? The captain's words caused Trixie to grin, to slowly fade. You think I haven't thought of that? Trixie reared up theatrically, falling back into habit in her suddenly unsure situation. I've already prepared a thing for that. Yes. The captain raised an eyebrow and grinned. Always her ace in the hole for riling Trixie. These foals will know the course when I am here, because I will tell them myself. Surely returned to Trixie's voice, as her plan played itself out in her head. Yes, with their leadership and a third of their population crippled, they'll be running around in a panic. After I announce myself, what little organization they had left will crack, leaving them ripe for conquest. She leered down towards the captain. Thank you, foal, for making my plan even more flawless. You may have even saved me some inconvenience down the line. Trixie laughed frigidly, her horn glowing brighter as she turned from her captain. Facing in the direction of New Ponyville, Trixie planted a hoof firmly in the ground and narrowed her eyes. She concentrated on the words she wanted to speak, imagined herself speaking them, but never moved her lips. Citizens of New Ponyville, the captain heard booming in her head. I am the great and powerful Trixie, and I am here to end your pathetic rebellion.